So they have this whole system for approving names. So basically, the person who discovers an element gets to suggest a name for it. And I say suggest because the IUPAC has in the past looked at the name that scientists suggested and said, not calling it that. One example in particular was actually bohrium. Bohrium, the original scientist who discovered it, wanted to call it Niels bohrium because it's named after a guy named Niels Bohr. And the IUPAC is like, no, guys, no, we're not calling it that. But we'll talk about that when we talk about elements named for people. So the most recent 4 elements were added not too long ago in November of 2016, bringing us to 118 total elements. As of right now, there's no elements waiting for names, which is pretty cool. My entire time, I took my first chemistry class in 1997, and from then until 2016, I know, as my son says, way back in the 1900s, Mom. But from 1997, when I first learned about chemistry, until 2016, there were always elements that we were waiting for names on or waiting for them to discover, and as of right now, there aren't any. So that whole periodic table bottom row is filled. People, the first of the elements that we're going to talk about that are named for people is it is named after one of my favorite scientists, and that is curium. So curium is named after Marie and Pierre Curie. It is element number 96. Now, I do want to note, curium was not discovered by Marie and Pierre Curie. It was named to honor them. Neither of them were alive to see an element named after them. It was actually discovered in the year 1944 by a guy named Glenn Seaborg and his research team. Now, Glenn Seaborg he's a really big deal in discovering elements.
10 in the future?
Those are the masses of the elements. So those aren't the atomic numbers, those are the masses of them. And we do have elements that have masses at that or far above that. Good question, though. Very good question. Now, as far as your question, do you think we'll discover element 210 in the future? Maybe. 30, 40 years ago, I don't think that people could have ever imagined that we'd have 118 elements. Certainly not 50, 60 years ago. A lot of this, people could have never imagined that we had elements as heavy as we do today. The reason that it's so hard to get heavier elements is because the bigger the nucleus gets, the more likely it is to fall apart. So it becomes incredibly unstable. So you have a lot of protons and neutrons, and when it gets too big, it doesn't stay together. And I use the analogy of, imagine that you're trying to carry plates. So you're carrying plates. And imagine that you had like 200 plates in your hands. What are your chances of dropping those plates? Pretty high, right? 200 plates in your hand, you're gonna drop something. It's like that with these very big, very heavy elements. They just don't like staying together, so they fall apart, and that's what we call radioactivity, which is actually kind of neat stuff. All right, moving on to elements that get their names from mythology. Who's excited about this part? Sully's like, yes. Henry's like, yes. Luke is like, yes. Well, I will tell you that there are elements named for planets. We're going to talk about 3 of them right now. Can anybody guess the name of one? Luke.
Mercury.
Mercury is one, and that's not one of the ones we're talking about right now. But you are correct, there is Mercury, and it is named after both the planet and the messenger god. Sully.
Wait, actually, I just remembered what I was thinking of. Was it an element?
Wait, what?
I was thinking about Jupiter for some reason.
Jupiter? Nope, there's not one named after Jupiter.
I forgot.
Justin, what do you think it is?
Venus?
Not Venus. Vin.
Plutonium.
Plutonium is one of the elements named after what was at the time a planet. Zara.
Neptunium?
Neptunium, yes, Neptunium, plutonium. There's one more in that group. Does anybody know what it is? Luke?
Uranium.
Uranium, yes, uranium, neptunium, and plutonium. So those elements are named after the planets Uranus, Neptune, and Pluto. Uranus is named after the Greek primordial god of the sky, Neptune is named after the Roman god of the sea, and Pluto is named after the Roman god of the underworld. Now, these elements weren't discovered together. Elements on the periodic table. So, our first element on the periodic table that's named for a place is americium. Americium is element number 95. It is made in a lab. You're not going to find americium naturally. There's no chunks of americium sitting in a mine anywhere because it is unstable, it does decay. It was created, this is another Glenn Seaborg element, in 1944 at UC Berkeley, the University of California, Berkeley. Americium is radioactive, and you have some in your house.
What?
Americium is an element commonly found in smoke detectors. I mentioned smoke detectors and radioactive elements, and everybody looks up. Next up, we have tennessine. Tennessine is element 117. This is one of the most recent elements named. It is also made in a lab. It's not found naturally. I do want to mention there is no tennessine in this picture. This is just a picture of a girl at the American Museum of Science and Energy. Where, I wonder what Californium is named for.
It's obvious.
Pretty obvious, right?
California.
It is named after Stephen California, no, it's not named after Stephen California. Californium and berkelium are elements 97 and 98. They were created at the University of California, Berkeley, which is in California. This is actually a picture of part of UC Berkeley's campus. This is a picture of the California state flag. Because, it's not a smell like sulfur or rotten eggs or sticky diapers or anything like that. It is a smell chlorine has a distinctive kind of pungent smell. Bromine does as well. If you've been on a water ride at an amusement park, you know how the water has its own unique smell to it, like a log flume ride or a boat ride at an amusement park. The water kind of has that pungent smell to it. That's the bromine in it. They use bromine as a disinfectant in the water.